Good morning. Happy Monday and welcome back. I guess I should say that to myself because I have only been live one or two times since mid-December, right after my concerts were done. And I realized, music teachers should take a break. And so I took a little break and it felt so restful and wonderful. I hope you were able to have a lovely holiday season of break and rest. But today we're going to talk about why should we care about Public Domain Day. So I'm going to hit the ground running, something that I'm super nerdy and excited about. And if you are nerdy and excited about something like this too, you should let me know in the comments because I would love to hear who else is excited about this specific year in Public Domain Day. So first of all, what is Public Domain Day? Let me get into that, and then I'll share with you why it's so exciting for somebody who is a musician, whether you're a composer or you're just a choir director or even like a pianist or a piano teacher, something like that, why Public Domain Day is so exciting. So the public domain in general, if you aren't familiar with the public domain in the United States, is when works go into basically when a musical composition or a book, anything that has been copyrighted by someone, when that work goes into public domain, it can be legally shared without permissions or fees attached to it. So here's why that is exciting. First of all, we use works like this for educational purposes all the time. And we don't necessarily have the resources in different educational settings to pay the licensing fees or get the permissions that permissions aren't that difficult, but sometimes depending on how famous the person is or their estate, that can be really challenging. So when something enters the public domain, whether it's a book or a poem or a musical composition or a melody, it could be just the melody from the musical composition, something like that. When it enters the public domain, we can then screen a film, or we can perform the music publicly without paying licensing fees, or we can access those materials and revamp them. So composers can use a melody that was previously under copyright, but is now part of the public domain to recreate like a new arrangement or a new part of a work based off of that specific other work, so that we can creatively use these things that otherwise might be lost in history. These things that started to lose flavor or lose, like they just became less well known, can suddenly become well known, and they can kind of spur more creative works off of them. Like I said, you can reimagine books, you can turn the books then into films, or you can adapt songs and movies and all sorts of things. So when a work enters a public domain, it means the public can actually afford to use it freely and to breathe new life into it, basically. So why should we care about that? Well, first of all, it brings a whole new set of creative energy or creative possibilities for composers. This then also means if you are a teacher that you can use those works publicly or educationally for your classroom in full rather than just using a percentage like you normally would. So this gives us more options as teachers, more opportunities as composers to use things freely. And it just adds to our options of works that we can get into, if you will. Does that make sense? So January 1st each year adds a whole new set of works to the public domain. So this specific year in 2022, we now have access to the works from 1926 and sooner. We have works, access to those specific like books and melodies from songs, like sheet music and things like that from 1926 and earlier. So unfortunately, public domain was actually kind of extended, or copyright was extended before this. So in the past, we used to have more options because they wanted to extend copyright so that people could have, access to their own works longer. But honestly, it was not a good thing because then people who their works were still under copyright, but other people weren't as well knowing them about, like, the different films and things like that. They were ended up kind of becoming lost. Like I said, things don't get lost in history when they enter public domain and people rediscover them or reimagine them, right? So there are still countries that are actually lengthening their copyright terms. Currently, we're not in that situation in the US, but what could have been, so right now, works from 1926 are finally entering public domain. But before, the laws were different, and we would normally have access now to 1965 and earlier. So it's difficult because we suddenly have these new rules, and now we have to wait a lot longer for some of those things. So libraries can't even, did you know, this is kind of a crazy fact about public domain and copyright. Did you know libraries can't even digitize old works without public domain access rights? Yeah. So that's partly why things get lost, is because people don't have access to do freely with them what they want or really would benefit from being updated and kept in the, I don't know, in the know, in the free domain, public domain, right? So I maybe got a little long-winded on the nerdy part of it, but this is why should we care? Because it makes things more accessible for us as teachers. We can use certain works for free that we didn't used to be able to use and have access to those. It adds a new, fresh creativity to what composers can arrange and do with certain things. We can use certain poetry without asking permission that we didn't used to be able to. There's poetry by E.E. Cummings that is in this public domain currently now that just entered 2 days ago. We have some poems by Langston Hughes. We have Winnie the Pooh. So there's all sorts of things that we can now use and have access to without asking permission, without paying fees that we didn't used to be able to. So that really helps all of the upcoming composers. That helps the public schools and other community organizations that don't have a big budget. This helps all sorts of us out, and it helps the work stay alive and active and breathing, right? So why should we care? Because it really just benefits us, and it benefits the works, and it benefits our students. So if you watched all the way to the end, thanks for hanging in there with me and getting in a little nerdy with me. If you learned something new today about public domain and copyright, let me know in the comments what that is, because I know that this can be a really kind of nebulous topic that people are like, oh, I don't quite understand it, or I don't quite get it. And it can be something that we can make a lot of mistakes in as teachers. So if you would like me to do a training on copyright and what we're allowed to use and not use for things that are under copyright, let me know in the comments that you would like that, because that was something that I definitely have considered doing and I haven't gotten to yet. So if you're watching this not in the group Music Lover to Profitable Music Teacher, there's a link for that in the description of this video. Go pop over there, and there's lots of other helpful information in the guide section that you can search if you are like, wow, this was super helpful as a teacher, as a musician, and I have lots of other information there for you. You can go search it and find it in categories, and it's super easy to navigate. So check that out, and I will catch you again tomorrow. So if you are enjoying this information, I will be here again at between 8:15 and 8:45 Central Standard Time. So you can expect me Monday through Friday now that we're back into the swing of things. So have an awesome rest of your day, and bye for now.